So if you've been getting older, or even if you're not very old at this point, you've probably heard people say the older you get, it just gets so much harder to lose weight. It's so much easier to gain weight. And while I'm certainly not going to argue that people tend to gain weight more as they get older, so today I'm going to look at a handful of things. One thing I want to look at is I'm starting to believe that maybe fast and slow metabolisms just in general between different people is less of a thing than I previously thought. Of course, you know me, I want to look at some research to try to determine if your metabolism slows down, and if so, how much it does as you do get older, what the main cause of any potential slowdowns are. I want to talk about what I've seen over the years with clients, and I want to talk about a real life example of someone who's close to me. And of course, I'll wrap it all up with what you can do to help prevent slowdowns in metabolism as you get older. Alright, you've probably seen people like this and you've probably kind of got mad at them sometimes, and this is the type of person who can just eat whatever the heck they want and they just never seem to gain weight. It's just unfair, right? Well, I'm actually starting to believe that there's something behind these people, and it's not just necessarily genetics. It can seem like it on the surface, and to be honest, my family, the DeWaay boys, have always just notoriously been skinny growing up. The kind of person who could eat whatever they want, never gain weight. That was me when I was a child. That was my dad when he was a child. That has been my child. So it can be easy to think, well, the DeWays are just people who have fast metabolisms, but we got to look a little bit closer. We were all very active when we were younger. I played every sport known to mankind well into my late 20s and even into my 30s some. I was always playing baseball, basketball, flag football, racquetball. I was in golf leagues and I would play 18 holes of golf, and I wouldn't use a cart, I would walk the whole way. I was always moving, always running around, playing, just doing tons of stuff and super active. My dad not only was a cross-country runner, so obviously he was burning lots of calories doing that, but he also grew up on a farm, was doing tons of chores all the time, doing heavy labor, helping out the family farm, so he was super active. My son has always been crazy active too. He plays soccer, he runs around at school, he loves gym class, he's always running around and just burning lots of calories. So is it genetics, or is it because how active we are? Well, this brings me to the real life example I want to show you. I'll be honest, I was kind of hesitant to share this because it's my son, he's just a kid, and I didn't really want to throw this out there, but I talked to him, he's cool with it, and I want to show you how it's not just some people can eat whatever they want and some people can't. And the example here is prior to the pandemic happening, he was the kid who did that. He ate whatever he wanted, he was super skinny. I remember when Paul and I were both cutting, we were both getting pretty lean, and we took a picture with our kids, and Sai had his shirt off too with us, and it was like he outshred both of us. He was so lean and like not an ounce of body fat on him. Well, what happened though? The pandemic hit. Quarantine life hit. Now he's not running around at school, he's not doing soccer, he's not going to after school activities and running around there and always playing all the time. He was at home. I mean, we took that pretty seriously at first and didn't spend really any time in 2020 outside of the house very often unless we absolutely had to. And all that activity that he previously had was gone. And now take a look at some pictures of what happened to him during that time when the activity went away and he was stuck at home. All of a sudden, he really started filling out. If you look at some of these pictures, looking at his face, it's almost shocking to think it's even the same kid. And that was in about a 9-month time frame of taking away the activity. What happened when he started going back to school and he started getting active again? He's getting back into soccer and all these different things that are getting him active again. All of a sudden the weight just started falling back off again. He got really lean. Now he's even been doing a little bit of working out and stuff, and now you can see so much leaner again. He's shredded with me all over again, and he's completely taken off all that weight, and it's all because he got active. So that's the main point I'm making here, is activity levels make a big difference, and this is what I see with my clients as well. People who are more active, who take more steps on a regular basis, whether it's through a job or because they choose to, they're the people who get to eat more calories, tend to see better results, and have an easier time with the process because they're just burning so many more calories than those who sit around and don't move much. I mean, you just don't really see very many people who are very obese who take like 10,000 steps a day. Like, do these people exist? Sure, but it's very rare. Most of the time when people take that many steps on a consistent basis, they have a tendency to be leaner individuals. And I'm often shocked by how few steps some people take. When we start getting into the routine, I have them start tracking their steps in their everyday life, and some people will literally average less than 1,000 steps a day. And I think this is arguably one of the biggest reasons why it gets so much harder when you get older. You get more responsibility, you get an office job, or even now it's becoming much more common to not even have to go into the office, and you just sit in front of your computer at home home and you never even have to leave the house. Modern day convenience has made it very easy to not have to move around very much. You don't even have to go to the store to go shopping. You can get everything you need from Amazon delivered right to your door. You can get your groceries delivered so you don't have to leave your house for that. You almost at this point don't really have to leave the house if you don't ever want to. Hell, my wife and I go for walks on a trail next to our house pretty frequently, and even then we're seeing people who use exercise equipment where they don't even have to do anything anymore. Like the bikes and the scooters and the skateboards, they're all motorized now. They just sit there and it just goes for them. We're just in a society where it becomes very easy to be more sedentary and not burn very many calories. And there was even a meta-analysis done that looked at how many steps people take, and the all-cause mortality rates were about 12% lower for every additional 1,000 steps taken. And there was a massive difference between people who only took a couple thousand steps a day and people who took like 16,000 steps a day. Another reason why it gets easier to gain weight and harder to lose as you get older is because the older you are, the more likely you are to have dieted several times. And this is especially true if you've taken more extreme measures and done a lot of yo-yo dieting to get there. As there's research that's shown the more times you diet and the more aggressively you do it, the slower your metabolism is likely to be. And this is because of the self-defense mechanism your body has against starvation. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to do with actually getting older. It's just because you've done a lot of dieting and ran your metabolism into the ground. So instead of just going by that correlation, let's look at some research and try to determine how much your metabolism slows down as you age, as well as what the possible cause would be. So first of all, to get a term out there, basal metabolic rate. This is how many calories your body burns just kind of like being alive. So if you're to sit around and do absolutely nothing all day and not move a single muscle, that would be your basal metabolic rate. Of course, you burn calories through activity, through things like the thermic effect of food, the thermic effect of exercise, but I would consider more your basal metabolic rate to be more like your natural metabolism. And there's been some research that shows that there's about a 1 to 2% slowdown in basal metabolic rate per decade from your 2nd to 7th decade of life. So yeah, it does appear like your metabolism slows down as you age, but 1 to 2% per decade? That is not a very significant amount. It's something, but it wouldn't be the difference between being able to just eat whatever you want and then all of a sudden doing the same thing and gaining a bunch of weight. And here's the big kicker. They said almost all slowdowns was because of loss of muscle mass. And you've heard me talk about over and over the importance of muscle for not only body composition, but also your metabolism. Now, another study that came to a similar conclusion, and actually was even a bit more shocking to me, was that there was no slowdowns in metabolism between the ages of 20 and 60 when muscle mass was equated for. So that would go very much in line with the previous one, because this one says as long as you keep the same amount of muscle, your metabolic rate actually doesn't even slow down all the way to the age of 60. And this study talks about how muscle mass decreases about 3 to 8% per decade after 30, and it's even higher after 60, especially when sarcopenia, which is loss of muscle as you age, tends to kick in more. Not only that, but a decrease in muscle mass is usually accompanied by an increase in fat mass, negative body composition. It makes it more likely for insulin resistance and all these things that can add up to increased risk of lower bone density, diabetes, obesity, heart disease, and osteoporosis. So if losing muscle is the reason we see slowdowns in metabolism, and you do naturally lose muscle as you age, well, what does that tell you? You need to be strength training to not only preserve the muscle, but possibly even build it to help things out. And it's also been shown that we lose about 1 to 2% in muscle per year after the age of 50. So once you get even older, it does seem to kick up a bit. Now there is another potential factor here, and I'm not going to get into too much in this video because honestly going through all that other research was hours and hours and hours to get this video out, and I want to get this one out. It's been a long time for me to get this done. But there's also potentially for you ladies, menopause, and that might throw another monkey wrench into things. But to really do my due diligence on how much that alone can possibly change metabolism, I need to spend a lot more time looking into things, so perhaps that'll be a future video. But I did quickly find this study that showed menopausal women who regularly perform exercise, in this case actually endurance, did not have the same decline in resting metabolic rate as sedentary women did. So it's possible, again, we go back to activity levels, and this makes even more sense when you think about it for menopause. I've worked with many women who've gone through peri and post-menopause, and it can definitely be a struggle, but what I have found to be the most common thing is Well, when you go through this, you're so tired. I mean, you're probably not sleeping very well. You have all these hot flashes. You're fatigued all the time. You don't want to do anything. So what happens when you're that tired? You tend to move around less. You also probably feel less motivated. You're not necessarily in a great place mentally. And when you don't care as much, you tend to overeat more. So when you're going through this, it's very possible because of this very challenging thing. And I'm not trying to minimize it. I can't know what it's like myself. I can only feel for you, but I see it time and time again as, well, I'm even eating the same, but I'm gaining a bunch of weight, but activity levels have dropped. And when I say activity, I'm talking about everything, not just like how much exercise you're doing. So with all that being said, what can you personally do to make sure that your metabolism doesn't slow down as you age, or at least minimize it as much as possible? Well, 1, stay active. 2, you gotta protect that muscle mass. Strength train. Eat a high protein diet. This is how you build and maintain muscle. All the things that I'm always telling you about how to get a better body all goes in line with how to protect your metabolism. It's not just about that though. I mean, especially if you really like cardio, do more cardio. I do recommend a combination of cardio and strength training. They are both beneficial, but a lot of people just ignore the strength training completely and only do cardio, and even then, oftentimes off and on. And then you also want to make sure you avoid more extreme yo-yo dieting and stop dieting your metabolism into the ground. And this especially becomes true when you do it in a way where you become the cardio bunny who ignores training and starves yourself, causing you to lose lots of muscle. And then when you do lose it, if you gain it back again once you give up, well, you're gonna gain all that body fat back, but you're not gonna gain the muscle back. And this is why body comp tends to get worse over time. Metabolism gets even slower over time. So we need to avoid that type of behavior to make sure your metabolism stays in a better place as you age. Which, speaking of yo-yo dieting, especially if this has been something you've always struggled with, if you're still not really clear why yo-yo dieting tends to make you fatter over time, I had this video you can check out up top next, which not only explains why this happens, but also what you can do to correct this and finally lose the weight and keep it off. So make sure you check that out next. Otherwise, I think you'll like this bottom video instead. And I'll see you in that other video.